Conor Benn contacted me last week and wanted to have a chat, which surprised me. He's a very clever young man as well. He's not a fool.
But the way that it's been handled, the situation has been handled, is foolish.
There's a lot of money in this fight, and universally it's accepted that the main reason for this fight is money. Welcome to Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. Incredibly, unbelievably, almost unsustainably, due to the producers I might add, we've got to episode 50. Let's get on with the show. Spencer,
Simon.
Nice to see you.
You too, mate.
Interesting week. Not huge fights going on, but interesting fights with Michael Conlan suffering a surprise defeat.
Yep.
I thought it was a fascinating fight. Lots of noise in around the boxing world. One of the noises that landed at my doorstep, strangely, is Conor Benn. Obviously, there's a lot of noise going on about Conor Benn and the Chris Eubank Jr. fight.
Yep.
And we heard Robert Smith last week talking about the scenario surrounding Conor Benn, that his application to fight or to have a fight sanction in this country had been refused. We've seen a very strong response from Eddie Hearn. But out of the clear blue sky, I think you know this anyway, but other people don't, Conor Benn contacted me last week.
Sure.
And he contacted me through Sam Jones and wanted to have a chat, which surprised me. So I and Conor went and got together and had about an hour and a half. It was an interesting chat, Spence. Some of it I'm not going to share because it's conversation that I said to Conor I wouldn't breach his confidence in me relaying it, and I think you'll find that Conor is going to be in the media sooner rather than later and tell people certain things and talk about his situation. But it was an hour and a half with a young man that went from being very emotional to being very angry. He's very cross with you, by the way. Through to someone that was very placid and very thoughtful. My overriding takeaway from the conversation with Conor was he's a very decent young man. He's a very nice boy.
No one's denied that.
Very nice boy.
No one's denied that.
He's a very clever young man as well. He's not a fool.
But the way that it's been handled, the situation has been handled, is foolish. If I'm totally honest, I think that it's been a disaster, Simon, really from the beginning. And you know, to pick up on what you said there, you know, with him being very angry with myself and whatever, we just got to look at the facts and what the facts are. And I think that the way that they've dealt with it, I know that they've, Team Ben have said there's always been an agenda against him. You've never seen that with previous people that have failed tests or whatever. You go, there's only an agenda because the way that they've dealt with it, and they've come back and so left us talking the way that we had to talk about it and say, listen, mate, you have failed 2 separate tests at 2 separate times. Until you prove your innocence, you remain guilty, and that's the way that we've dealt with it.
Yeah, he has a very. I mean, listen. I came away from the conversation. When I said to Sam and I said to Conor, listen, I'm not going to say anything different to your face than I've said about you.
Sure.
Right. So you need to be clear, Conor. This is not a conversation between you and I, where all of a sudden you're going to get some sort of validation or benediction from me. You're going to get the same sentiments that I've said about you. I'll say it to you. And the conversation started along the lines of, do you believe I'm a drugs cheat? And I said, I'd like to think not. Conor was like, well, Christ, what chance have I got? I said, well, hold on, son. You and I have met a few times. You're not my son. I can't testify for what you do and don't do. What I can tell you is that I think you've handled the whole set of circumstances very poorly.
Sure.
I think you made a bit of a tit of yourself by going on Piers Morgan. But Conor's got a lot to say, and there's a lot more behind some of the things that you and I think we understand about procedure, about who did what, when, and I don't just mean the drugs tests.
Yeah.
I mean the procedure being followed by others.
Yeah.
The reasons why outcomes have come from tribunals, or certainly in front of the Independent Drug Commission. And I'm going to let Conor say that because I've told him that I won't breach his trust.
Sure.
But there's a lot more than just a simple, straightforward line. The reasons why he's angry with you is because he thinks that you categorically called him a drugs cheat. His assertion about you is that you said, just hold your hand up, son.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not sure, Conor, that's right.
The wording was...
I've listened to Spencer repeatedly say he's got to clear his name.
Absolutely. Listen, it remained, you failed 2 tests, and until you prove that you're innocent, or if you can't prove your innocence, then you're guilty. So where we're at now is we're a year down the line, and like you say, Simon, he's had that meeting with you, he's got a lot to say, and there's a lot more behind the scenes. Until he presents that evidence, you remain guilty. And that's where we're at with it. And so, like, it's no good being angry with me or anyone else that's gone down that road and saying, you know, like, listen, do you believe I'm innocent? I say, well, tests say otherwise. And until you prove your innocence, you remain guilty. And that's what we're going to comment on. So it's no good him being angry with any of the media for their reaction to what is going on right now, because the evidence is the evidence. It remains exactly the same, and we've heard no different from Conor, apart from he's got a scientist to prove his innocence, and the way it was sitting in his body, he's innocent, he's going to prove this innocence, and we haven't seen anything, which makes him look more guilty. And that's, as you can understand, that's
what I said to him.
That's where the public are at, and it's not a witch hunt towards Conor, and it's not an agenda against him.
He feels that there has been. And I said to him, look, Conor, with the greatest respect in the world, don't give me feelings, give me facts.
Yeah.
Point me to where anybody has said you're a drugs cheat. That in terms of people like myself, if you want to talk to me, then we're going to have a candid exchange of conversation. Conor, I'm not here to be someone that's representing your point of view in the media. You do that yourself, son. But I'm here to listen to you because you've asked me to come and have a conversation with you. I met him at the Grosvenor House Hotel. We had a private conversation for an hour and a half. And I think you'll find that Conor will come and talk to the media himself. I think he looks at it now and looks at, I've spent a lot of money with lawyers.
Yeah, sure.
I have made decisions that I look back on with the benefit of hindsight and think I should have done that differently. I said to him, you're walking around the ringside, glowering and scowling at people.
There you go.
And he said, because I was angry and I was hurt. And I didn't know what to do with it, and I didn't know how to process it.
But where's the people around him supporting him this is
my point.
And directing him and helping him and showing him where he should be and where he's at? I mean, it has been an absolute disaster. And I do feel sorry for the kid because he's the one, you know, innocent or guilty, he's the one that's been taking it all. He's making these decisions. They've all been terrible decisions. I don't know who's guiding him or who's advising him, should I say. But it's been an absolute disaster.
But he'll correct things. Interestingly, you know, he talked about, you know, this thing about, I'm not becoming a mouthpiece for Conor Benn now, by the way, but when you've sat with someone for an hour and a half and you pick up different pieces of information, you've got to be a little bit ignorant if you don't start maybe deviating a little bit. The observation was that Conor tore up his boxing licence, didn't he?
Yes.
That according to Conor, is completely untrue. He never did that at all. Sure. That's not what happened at all. What happened was his boxing licence expired, and due to some reason in terms of his own internal administration, they didn't renew the boxing licence. So actually, technically, it already run out anyway.
Sure.
So there's nuance, and people say it's got nothing to do with failed drugs tests.
But here's one for you, right? And this is what a lot of people that are listening are going to want to know as well, like myself, and where we're at now, a year down the line, is, has Conor got the evidence to prove that ended up in his system a different way as opposed to taking it himself? And if he's got that evidence...
According to him categorically, and according to him...
If he's got that evidence, then just present it and we can all move on. And if not...
And he'll tell people, and I know this sounds like I'm going around the houses, but I gave my word to Conor that I will allow him to tell his own story and not breach the confidence of a private meeting. I spoke to him last night, I said, you were going to speak about this, and I told him what I'm going to speak about. He, without touching upon too much, he and his advisor, Rene, are categoric that they've got an ability to be game-changing in the information that they have about the ingestion of this particular substance, how it manifests itself, and also why it hasn't found its way into the public domain, why it didn't find its way into the appeal process, why the British Boxing Board of Control haven't seen it. There's a lot more than what the straight line, and also this mythical 270-page report, which was never apparently a 270-page report.
Who said it was
a 40-page report.
Where did that come from? Where did that come from originally?
I asked him all these questions. Yeah. But what I came away from Conor was, again, people will say, you're getting old, Jordan, and you're getting a bit flaky. This is a very nice kid, and if you listen to him, it's difficult to understand that he would put himself in the way of these circumstances. It's, maybe I'm a bad judge of character. Maybe I'm getting older and a little bit softer. I don't think I am.
Yeah.
But I sat there thinking, Why didn't? And I said it to him. Why
Where's
don't
the
you
support
just
of
take
his
your medicine?
trainer and his manager? Like with Tony Sims would fit into this. Eddie Hearn's going to fit into this. You know, Frank Smith.
Well, I've asked him all that.
Where is that support?
No one.
And why has Conor been able to drive the ship, if you like, and it's been an absolute disaster?
Well, he hasn't. He's had very strong legal advice and paid a lot of money for it. And the legal advice.
Why is it so bad?
Well, the legal advice has done its job.
Right.
But the court of public opinion is where he's lost his position. And the meeting that you had with me last week, no one knew about it. Eddie didn't know about it. Tony Sims didn't know about it. The only person that knew about it was myself.
Right.
And Conor and Sam Jones. And the reality of it is the conversation has been had. Conor understands better that there's not a witch hunt for him in the media. He still has his issues about the manner in which he's allowed himself to be represented. What you're saying is correct. Where are those around him?
Yeah.
But in real terms, those around him, like his legal team, like Morgan, have done their job. But what's not done their job properly is the court of public opinion, because it looks like it looks like two failed drugs tests, not an accountability of it, a snarling, scowling fighter, a ridiculous interview on Piers Morgan, and potentially a technicality. But it'll be interesting to see when he does come on, and I think it will be on this platform. Yeah, you'll hear it from himself.
So can you understand, where we come from, as in the media to speak about what's? No, that's what I'm saying. So as in, what does Conor expect us to say when we can only go by what we're given, the evidence that we're given, and that's why when he's angry, getting so angry about it,
I think he's a lot wiser.
You've got to understand, Conor, that of course we're going to talk the way we're talking because we're talking about the evidence that's been presented to us.
I think
that's where we're at.
I think he's a lot wiser now about where his best advice should be taken, and who is looking after him and who isn't, and who is benefiting from the association and who isn't.
He needs a good challenges.
And it'll be interesting to see. You know, I came away from it with a slightly different view. I still think there's questions to be asked and answered. He did answer them, but he's going to answer them himself when he comes in the public domain. He's ready for this fight. He wants this fight. He believes this fight's coming on. And there's a lot of money in this fight, and universally it's accepted that the main reason for this fight is money.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and I think the money that they're talking about is pretty substantial.
Yeah.
He believes that they're gonna get this fight on.
Is February the 3rd? Is February the 3rd realistic? I mean, we're approaching Christmas now. February the 3rd's not a lot of time.
Well, I think again, Conor's going to put himself in the hands of others to be able to facilitate that solution. I mean, we're hearing stuff. I spoke to Eddie last week about a couple of things. Apparently, he wants me to play some charity darts match. I can know where I can land the first dart, right?
I'm playing one of those.
Oh, yeah? You can't even see the balls.
Who can't?
You.
Listen, ask David.
You're going to be on a step ladder so you can see it from the hockey. Right? But I think the real issue in this fight is the Eubank side of things, whether they're going to be able to get Eubank in the ring.
He's the one that's not signed the contracts at the moment, yeah.
I think so, yeah. And I think there's a whole, obviously you've got the British Boxing Board of Control that are preparing to double down, and I think Conor thinks people like me have egged on the British Boxing Board of Control.
So we have to. So a lot of people are going to ask the question: if this fight goes ahead February the 3rd, and we get it at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which they're talking about, the British Boxing Board of Control have now refused
the first application.
Refused Conor permission.
Robert Smith told us last week.
So where does it land? Where does it lie? Like under what sanctioning body does it go under?
You're hearing rumours about PBA, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I don't know what you make of that.
I mean, then I suppose this. Then I asked the question. So what happens if the fight goes ahead under PBA, and everyone that's involved in that's got a British Boxing Board of Control licence? What happens to them with the British Boxing Board? Is that another matter?
But this is the question that the British Boxing Board of Control can only answer.
Right.
If the appeal that's being heard apparently in January, if the outcome comes out relatively quickly, then Eddie Hearn and his guys will have built the fight, be ready to go on the 3rd of February. If it doesn't, then people will be taking a risk-reward analysis.
That's what I'm saying. What's the consequences with the British Boxing Board
of Control?
Well,
they'll be taking. It depends how ballsy the British Boxing Board of Control want to get.
Sure.
If they want to go after sparring partners, if they want to go after trainers, if they want to go after promoters, we'll see. The guys that are trying to make this fight believe that they won't have the jurisdiction. Jurisdiction being a word that's being bandied around quite a lot.
Yeah, sure.
But we'll see. We'll see.
Okay.
It'll be interesting to me if they don't fight, where they go. I had the pleasure, and I must not be too facetious. I had the pleasure of doing a podcast with Chris Eubank Jr. last week, which was hard yards. But one of the things he did say was an absolute on-camera appeal to Conor Benn, to Eddie Hearn, to Barry Hearn, to anyone would listen, not to put his son into this fight.
Wow.
I mean, proper. We moved past the Queen Elizabeth stuff. We moved past everything else, and we moved into
behind him not wanting his son in the fight.
His son
now the
should
fight's
not fight at 160.
At 160 now?
No.
It's because it was 157 before.
168. My son fights at 168. Right, okay. Well, you know who he wants in against, Conor, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Harlem. Yeah, Harlem Eubank, yeah.
But it was a very, so he believes...
Well, you know Chris is looking after Harlem now.
Chris believes, alongside the accusation that was made of him last time he came and spoke with me, which was that we took advantage of him.
Sure.
He doesn't believe that's to be the case. He also believes that his divine intervention, he somehow intervened with the first fight.
Right.
And that he was so much against it that his divine intervention stopped the first fight. And that obviously...
Well, listen, he did have major concerns, and I think when
it's his son.
When we look back at it in hindsight, Simon, we look back at it and we go 157. We saw what he's like at 160, and how he struggles at 160. You go 157. Might not sound a lot to the public.
He didn't struggle against Liam in the second fight, did he?
Yeah, no. But what I'm saying is that how much he struggles at 160. So to lose an extra £3,
he's not fighting at 160.
No. But I'm saying when we look back on it and saying that fight was being made, then that was crazy. That was crazy. 160, I think is fine.
That's not where. And I'm not sure how much jurisdiction Chris Eubank Sr. has.
Right.
If they don't fight one another, where do you want to see them going? I've said to Conor, I don't want you fighting this fight. I want you fighting at 147.
Yeah.
I want you fighting and going and getting a shot at a world title.
Absolutely.
At that weight class.
Listen, that's where Conor's future lies, at 147. We saw him at 154.
He says he can fight at 160. He says, I'm walking around at 175 now, look at me.
Yeah, so am I, but I could get down a lot lighter. What I'm saying, do you know what I'm saying is, that's not the ideal weight for him. All right, 180.
You're on egg on legs now. I don't know what
I walked
saying.
Into that.
I don't know what I'm
I walked into that. Right, so look, no, realistically, Conor's a 147 fighter. 154 we saw last time out. The punches didn't have the same effects, and I think that's the category where he should be. At welterweight is where he should be. You know, I know it's a tough division. I know you've got some great fighters there. You know. But that's where he should be focusing on, looking for world title shots at that sort of level. That's where he should be.
Just the final thing on Conor, Ben. What I came away from that conversation was wanting Conor to speak, wanting Conor for people to hear him, and wanting even more so than I've always wanted for him to prove his innocence if he can.
Yeah.
Or take his medicine, one of the two.
Yeah.
Because you cannot walk away from a conversation with that kid. Put aside the scowling and stuff. Put aside all that. He's actually a good kid.
Absolutely.
And as I said to him,
I've done podcasts with him. You know, we've been out with him.
Keep out of his way.
But what I'm saying is, he's a nice kid. But what's happened has been an absolute disaster, and I understand that. And yeah, we'd love him.
He should have been looked after better.
And that is what it is, Simon. It's not the fact that he's just not been looked after right. He's not been guided right, and this has created this terrible situation.
We will see. We will see. And if he's guilty, and if he can't prove his innocence, he's going to have to take his medicine.
Yeah.
Like we've always said.
There you go.
Amanda Serrano.
Yes.
Vacating her belt.
Yeah, she wants the 3-minute rounds. She wants to move up. She wants women's boxing. The WBC, she wanted to sanction women's boxing for 12 3-minute rounds as opposed to the 10.
They're too busy sanctioning Francis Ngannou fights, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. As opposed to sanctioning the 10. It seems crazy, actually, that they sanctioned the Francis Ngannou fight, but they wouldn't change women's boxing from.
What do you think to that? We've had this debate before.
Threes.
We're going to see something that certain people are resistant to. Women's boxing is here now. It's on the map, right? We're seeing the level of competency and skill reaching really significant levels. Yeah. And we know that when it goes from 2 to 3 minutes, we're going to see more knockouts.
Absolutely.
And there's a perspective in certain people's minds that that's not a particularly edifying look.
Well, do you know what the concern for me is? I think they've done the 2-minute rounds initially because I think the density of the skull, etc., is not the same as it is on a male. And then the argument is that they haven't got the power that the men have got, but they've got a volume of punches, and it's not about the power actually. So when women are draining down in weight, or when men are draining down in weight, they lose that fluid in and around the brain and whatnot. So it's not about the power of the punch; it's about the volume of the punches, and it only takes thousands of blood vessels in and around the brain. When you get dehydrated, those blood vessels lose that elasticity, and they become like bits of straw. It takes one shot, and one of the vessels can snap, and that causes the bleed on the brain, etc. And I think that the concern for the women is because
Dr. Oliver over there.
Yeah, well, listen, I know because I had half my head removed, so I sort of know a little bit about it.
Yeah. That was the best part they took out, right?
They left the spanner in there. They left the spanner in there. So, yes. So I'm sort
I was going to be smart, but that'll do. A spanner in there's fine.
Yeah. Just leave it. Yeah, so look,
do you think it's a good thing for women's boxing?
So I'm not
do you
sure
back her decision, and do you think it's inevitable?
No, so what I'm saying is if it's not broke, don't fix it. I think what we're getting with women's boxing right now are great fights, great competition. Why are we always trying to change?
She thinks it is. She's a competitor.
Yeah, she is. But I'm going to give you another one as well. So we've got Natasha Jonas versus Michaela Meyer on the 20th of January.
Who, by the way, got robbed against Alicia Baumgarten.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so Michaela Meyer has now thrown out there, I've asked Ben Shalom and I wanted to do it, we want to do it over 10 3-minute rounds. Natasha Jonas said, no one's ever told me about that. Ben obviously kept that quiet because he didn't want it over the 3-minute rounds. But Michaela's pushing for 3-minute rounds as well, and I just think it may be...
Will it help with scoring?
Well, it changes things hugely going from 2s to 3s. Trust me on that. Like the last minute of a round. Like if you look through the history of boxing, let's use Cole Frotch versus Jermaine Taylor as an example. Like had that last
Michael Conlan against Lee Wood.
Michael Conlan against Lee Wood. Had that last minute not been in those rounds, it would have been a different result. I mean, it's hugely. Yeah, I think it will change it hugely. The worry for me is that scientists have said, with the bone density and everything else, that someone gets hurt. And I don't want to see that, Simon. I think what we've got right now works. I think women's boxing right now is exciting, there's drama and everything else. People always want more.
So why is Serrano doing this?
I really don't know. I couldn't give you that answer if I'm totally honest. I couldn't, because Serrano is a pressure fighter, and she probably feels that as the rounds are going, the bell rings, and that's a better opportunity for her with that last minute on, because she's got an incredible engine, and that's the way that she fights. For anyone that boxes on the back foot and likes to nick the round, they can nick the rounds over 2-minute rounds, but over the 3-minute rounds, that's when it starts catching up with you, and that's the only logical reason I can think Serrano wants it, is because she feels that. Her and Katie Taylor at Madison Square Garden, that 10th and final round, had there been another minute in there, Katie was gone. Her legs were gone, she was hanging in there, she was biting down on her gum shield, like she was totally gone. That last minute could have been the difference between winning and losing for Serrano, and that's probably why she wants the 3s as opposed to the 2s. So,
well, we'll see.
I mean, where are you sat with it? Would you prefer 2s or 3s? I mean...
I have mixed emotions. I felt that when I was watching Savannah Marshall fight Clarissa Shields, I felt the rounds zipped by too quickly. And I felt, stylistically, for Savannah Marshall, the rounds at a 3-minute round would have been a better round for her.
She said that, and Mick Hennessy also said that to me as well. He said, listen, that's why we need... The girls, they all want to change it, by the way. It's not just those. I think a lot of the women want to change it.
We have to get the balance right, don't we, between what the actual people that really matter think, which is the fighters. If the money follows that as well, and if the scale of the boxing world embraces the opportunity for women's boxing, and because it puts it on a pedestal. Because what you get is, I suspect, women looking at it and going, well, men's boxing gets this, and the men's boxing will always have this argument that we fight 3-minute rounds. Yeah. Why can't we remove this argument from the conversation? I'm ambivalent towards it.
I think it will change. In the future, I do believe it will change, and I think they will end up going to 3-minute rounds, because I think the pressure from the women, the competitors themselves.
We'll see.
I think that's where it's going to end
up. Everything has a risk reward and an opportunity. Now, talking about opportunities and potentially an opportunity missed, Michael Conlan on the weekend. I mean, obviously, the expectation was Michael was going to win this fight.
Yeah.
And that Jordan Gill had seen better days.
Yeah.
But what we had in our hands was a very different fight, wasn't it?
Well, listen, I think what we had on our hands was a very different fight, because it was that Michael Conlan had seen better days. And I'll tell you where the fight left Michael Conlan, and that was when he got knocked out in the 12th and final round against Lee Wood, where he put in, this is bizarre, because he put in a career best performance that night and ended up getting knocked out in that 12th round, in that last minute of that 12th round. He's not been the same fighter since. He come back, he had a couple of wins, low-key wins. Then he went back in, he lost to Lopez, Alberto Lopez, in another fight where he was maybe expected to win, and he got stopped. I think it was the 7th round. Was it the 7th round? And the 5th round. I can't remember what it was, 7th, 5th round, or whatever it was. Then he goes in, and he goes in against Gill, who's had his problems outside the ring as well, by the way. He's had his own personal problems, and I think that's why a lot of people were doubtful Gill could pull this off. But there was a solid look about Gill when he went in there, you know.
I mean, Conlan dug in, and there were,
but the fight had left him, Simon.
But there was still. But if you listen to listen to the judges, I think Conlan was at certain points in the fight ahead on the scorecards.
Yeah, I don't know what judges they were. They should be. Yeah,
do you look at it and say?
I mean, I had him well behind.
Michael Conlan's fortunes, to some extent, have turned on one punch, haven't they?
Do you know what it was? I looked at it, right. So Gill had the game plan. He went in there with a game plan. Conlan was carrying his box out of the southpaw stance.
Go back to the question I'm asking.
Yeah, go on.
Right. Michael Conlan's trajectory at this level has pretty much changed on one punch, which is Lee Wood knocking him out.
Yeah.
Is that what happens? I mean, Audley Harrison had a similar experience.
I'm glad you mentioned Audley because I was going to use him as an example. But no, it's not what happens. Like if you look at people like Deontay Wilder, like some people recover from it. I think it's just the psychological damage that gets done to fighters. Different fighters deal with it in different ways.
Recovered from it, didn't he?
George Groves recovered from it, you know, and you know, I just think it is certain fighters never get over. Certain fighters are never the same again. They get knocked out and they're never the same again. Michael Conlan's one of those where I think you saw the punch resistance go. I think the power sort of seemed to have left him. You know,
well, he's gone up. He's gone up to super featherweight.
Yeah, but he looked a shadow of him former self, Simon. He really did. I mean, he's gone up another level, but really, Jordan Gill was a level that he was expected to be, and he looked good in doing it.
Yeah.
And for me, I mean, from the opening bell, he got floored with that left hook in the second round. And I thought he was losing all the rounds. I thought he was getting well beat. I mean, I was amazed. Barry Jones had him up at one point.
The one thing you can't do is you can't question his bollocks, can you? Because he bit down in the gum shield.
That's the one huge thing he has.
He was taking some shots, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Like incredible. I mean, that's one thing you can't question. And do you know what worries me? If you ask me now, where does he go from here now, Michael Conlan? I'd say I will need to see him retire. I want to see him retire. Do you know why? Because what you just said there, he's got bollocks and he'll keep going. He'll keep doing. And kids like that concern me because you just think, look, mate, he was an unbelievable amateur. You know, he had a huge support as a professional. Hopefully, financially, he's got himself a little bit secure. Go into training, managing, do whatever you want to do. But I think that he's not the fighter he once was. But here, he'll keep going like he was that fighter, and that concerns me because he's at that level where he's only going to be in those fights where you see him and
it's a bit like the Dave Allen thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is really. I mean, I just want him. I mean, but this is a level above that, really. Yeah. And I just want to see him. I'd like to see him say, you know what, that's it.
That'll
for me.
do, yeah.
Yeah, and I
hopefully he's in a position.
Hope he does, because he's a nice kid as well.
Hopefully he's economically in a position to do so.
Yeah.
Before we go, obviously we've got a big fight this weekend coming up in Bournemouth, Sunday night.
Yes.
Chris Billam-Smith.
Yeah.
Earlier today, I had a conversation with Jaya Patea, who's a formidable little sod, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's not backward about coming forward.
He's the monster of the division as well, by the way.
What do you think it's a good decision to put it on a Sunday night?
I think it is, because what is it? Bournemouth are playing away to Man United. That's right, isn't it? And so on the Saturday. And for Chris Billam-Smith, he's got a huge fan base there. They're all football based, and he wants his fans back there. So I think it's a great idea because, I mean, the big arena is sold out.
What are you expecting?
So I think he's done it for his fans really more than anything else.
What are you expecting from him? Because Lawrence Okoli kind of played into his hands a little bit, didn't he? I mean, when you can't let Lawrence get set in a fight. And he was looking like he got set, and all of a sudden, bam, he gets caught. Right? And then from that point on, Lawrence was all over the place, wasn't he? And he was.
Well, Masternak's one of those guys. You look at the fight he had with Tony Bellew back in 2015.
Yeah.
He lost that really in the last round, really. I mean, it was close. It went down to the wire to tell you where he sort of sat. Then he lost to...
I'm a celebrity, Tony Bellew. He might just win this. I'm a celebrity.
He might well do, actually. He's doing really well.
I know he will. But and then he lost in there.
He lost to Dorticus, who's a great fighter as well in 2018. Lost that on points. Masternak's one of those guys. I think he's been a pro like 17 years or something. Only lost to the very best, but he's a tough guy, and this is his first and probably his last opportunity at a world title.
What do you expect from Chris? What do you expect from Chris?
I'm expecting a war. I said to Chris, actually I spoke to Chris, we had him on the show last week, but I just said to him, potential banana skin this, because this kid will... He will bring it.
Yeah.
And Chris can't help but do that. Chris is one of those fighters that he doesn't know how to move back. He comes forward, hands high, and he will get into a war. But, you know, he knows how to get down in the trenches. He knows how to come through that. I'm expecting that on Sunday,
but do you expect Billam-Smith to win?
Of course, yeah. I expect Billam-Smith to win. Of course I do.
By what?
I think he wins, and I think he probably stops Masternak late.
Right.
I see around 9-10, somewhere around there, because I think that Masternak will give it a huge go. And I think that Chris will have to answer some questions about himself as well. He's going to have to dig deep.
Well, he's got.
But I expect him to win. But with what he's got on the horizon, you know, it's a huge risk. This as a voluntary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, listen, but he's a world title holder. This is what comes with the territory.
Yeah.
You know, he gets it in front of his home fans.
Yeah.
He can start making some money and ultimately setting himself up. So, good luck, Chris.
Yeah.
Right, Spence. That's it for this week's episode of Talk Boxing. We're not doing the like and subscribe bit anymore because we've got so many subscribers we don't need any more. We'll see you next time we're out.